Okay, so picking up where I left off, because I managed to cut the first part of this abruptly short. Sorry about that, but the video was getting pretty long. I wanted to split it into multiple videos. But like I said, covering into rank 1, you generally have 700,000 HP to work with on the bosses. They can remove all your buffs, remove all their debuffs, and recover their HP whenever they burst. So honestly, that's your only real issue, but that's if you're even doing this. If you ask me, 700,000 HP really isn't expert level. It seems like ultimate, but yeah. And generally, here's something for the normal enemies too, just in case. But pause it and read it if you want to. I'm only going to give a few seconds for each time I come across these. And some will get pretty large too, so keep that in mind. Because some of them have a laundry list of what the enemies do. Now then, second rank, you have a boss with 1.2 million HP and 2 turns before they do their nukes. They now have a raging meter, and they will generally put depletion and ability seal on you. Depletion, I remember, prevents your abilities from coming off cooldown, and ability seal just flat out prevents you from using them. So that said, it's really ability lacking. I mean, it's ability limiting bosses. So yeah, it was weird to say that, but you generally want to be able to remove debuffs off yourself in normal mode, and in raging mode you just don't want to deal with it. Just try to get her out of raging as soon as possible. And I don't know if you noticed, but all the bosses have the same strategy. They just change the element. The enemies are the ones that differ. Some of them can actually be pretty dangerous if done incorrectly, but for the most part, it seems, from what I've seen, the enemy layout doesn't really change until rank 6. They like copy paste the normal enemy layouts. You will get a mid boss at next rank, and I will show that, but anyways, here you go with this. The funny thing is, they recommend a strength of 30,000 with about 50% assault. That's actually what you need for Ragnarok, not for Ultimate. So I don't know why they suggest that for this. For Ultimate, you need about 20,000 to maybe the same assault. But anyways, rank 3. Now you start getting mid bosses. I'm not going to cover those. What I will cover is the bosses. But this is the point where people actually do start frequently grinding, because you can get a chance at SSR stuff. But what these bosses do, and they're pretty dangerous on this one, they will increase their mode gauge, meaning they will try to shoot themselves into raging. It's not a direct increase, but it will give them a nice little chunk of it. When they're in raging, they will do a lot of damage. Keep in mind, they only have 2 turns before they do any of those moves. 1 if it's in raging, because that's how the overdrive thing works for them, the orb system. But 3.5 million HP is a lot to take down, so keep that in mind. And the damage is generally a lot, like about yeah, they say 10 times the normal attack damage. It's generally going to hit 5 digits. So unless you're really packing a lot of HP, you're going to see somebody one-shot it. So you have to keep that in mind. If you're on the same level as where you should be fighting this, then yeah, you are going to get hit pretty hard. But anyways, here is the info for the mid bosses. And I had to try and get that off the screen so you can actually see it. But here's the info for the mid bosses on the bottom, for the normal enemies up top. Generally, if you've seen the normal enemies on the previous ones, they're probably the same here, just with more HP. Now, then rank 4 is the one where you definitely want to start trying to grind this, because you're guaranteed SSR from here on out. And those are the accessories you're trying to aim for, even though you want more powerful versions. But this is give you a bit of a grind right here. And this is where it is harder than Ragnarok difficulty on Advent. So my suggestion to you, if you can get reasonably far in a guild order, I would probably give this a shot. Like maybe the 4th or possibly even clearing a guild order run. So that's the time where you should probably give this a shot. But anyways, these enemies start getting a little bit annoying, because even though they're the same ones from before, they have a lot more HP, and you can really see the difference with how it's withstood. Unless you are packing a very, very strong grade, you're not going to take them out in one shot. And the mid-bosses have double the HP from last time, I've noticed. They had like 1 million before, now it's like 2 million. The bosses themselves, very dangerous fights now, because they have 5.5 million HP, the same 2 orb count. Now, they're not even going to give you freebies in normal mode. They will randomly hit you. It's not going to outright kill you unless somebody's really unlucky and takes a lot of damage. What will be the very damaging part of the fight is if it decides to get a raging off. So if you cannot get her out of raging mode quickly, you're going to eat one of these nukes, and it will randomly hit 3 times just like before, only it's enough damage to pretty much one-shot a character in each hit. If you are at the recommended level of fighting this fight, which still is clearable by the way, you could see 3 people getting wiped out in one go. You will need damage cut. This is the one time you definitely need damage cut. Otherwise, you're not withstanding this crap. And even then, you still might not withstand it. So, definitely bring a damage cut character, because this is where it will start hurting very, very hardly. It will start hitting you a lot. And it is guaranteed 5-digit damage per each hit on raging if you do not have damage cut. So, be very, very careful. But anyways, here's the same old stuff, basically. Stage 1 enemies. Stage 2 enemies, and a boss. Now, here's where things get very, very interesting. You're now able to get ancient accessories should you be able to clear this. On the other hand, this is a turning point in accessory quests, because now there is very, very conditional battles. You don't have any way around it now at this point. Before, you may be able to just out-damage enemies and whatnot, and you can still do that here. But now they really want you to focus on being able to do certain things. And this says in terms of difficulty, almost equal to the Guild Order. No, I think it is equal, maybe a little bit stronger than Guild Order. I don't know, for sure. But my suggestion to you is to be able to clear Guild Order with missions to safely do this. So, don't even try rank 5 without being able to clear Guild Order first off. And even then, you want to be able to clear missions in Guild Order. As in the specific ones where you might have to use certain souls or certain rarities of Kamihime. You're able to do that, you're able to safely clear this, I'm pretty sure of that one. Now, the enemies seem to be doing some different stuff now. So the enemy layouts have officially changed. The mid-bosses have gotten a lot more dangerous because they're starting to have a lot more health. 4 million or even 5 million. The bosses have 7.5 million HP, and there's a reason why it says this right here. Extreme damage. Now, generally, it's going to normal hit you throughout the fight until it wants to try to nuke you, but there's a reason why you got 5 orbs before it tries to hit you pretty hard. Well, I shouldn't even say pretty hard. You'll find out why. But the way these boss fights work now, you have to get her through normal mode and through raging mode at the same time. Should you not do that, you will take a nuke that will hit everybody on the team for far more damage than they can withstand. Unless you have a very extreme amount of damage cut, I'm talking at least 80% and a lot of HP, you will see everybody die. Reason is, it will deal 80,000 damage uncut. And let me put that in perspective. My best team has 27,000 HP and still can't withstand this crap. They do far more damage than they need to, so they can easily prevent it from happening. But should they get nuked by this, even they won't survive. You're not really meant to survive this attack. Unless you have an extreme amount of damage cut or somebody just flat out nullifies it, you will see them die. So the main trick of this fight is to try and get them up in the raging mode as quickly as possible and then nuke them all the way out of raging mode. That's probably the time to use your full burst. If you have anybody that can have any sort of direct decrease to mode gauges, that's probably a good time to use them, because it will knock the boss out of raging mode very, very quickly. However, because they won't be dead by the time you normally hit them out of raging mode, you want to make sure you try to finish them off in one shot if possible, because there's possibly the risk of them getting out of raging mode and still nuking you anyway. So, I mean, getting out of stun mode and still nuking you anyway, so you may not want to take that risk. But without a doubt, you have 5 turns, generally 6 turns basically, but you have a certain amount of turns to get them in a stun, or you will see your front lines get wiped. It doesn't mean the end of the fight necessarily, because you can still win. I've done so before. But it is very hard to win at that point, and you may see yourself losing. Thankfully, with Accessory quests, you can use as many elixirs as you want. My suggestion is to use it without elixirs, but if you do have to use one, then that might be the time. But my suggestion to you is to be able to clear it without an elixir. Maybe use one if need be. And be very careful in the water one too, because I do have to point out this enemy too. When its HP is less than 5%, it has a chance of putting ability and burst seal on your characters. That can really slow down the boss fight. So be very careful should that one show up. Because even if you're ignoring water, if you do Sunday, there's still a chance she might show. And then on top of that too, you're also having to deal with some really crazy stuff with the mid-boss of stage 2. And then also on top of that, this little sprinkle effect from a normal enemy in stage 1 on light. They really seem to hate light. Dark, I also have to point out too, there's a ruin effect from one of its enemies. That's going to outright kill somebody if it goes off. So be very, very careful. And then on top of that, the mid-boss apparently hits pretty hard too. But, definitely, boss, kill her ASAP. Preferably get her very deep into raging before the last few orbs. Now, here's the enemy data for the first part. Here's a lot of the enemy data for the mid bosses. It doesn't show it all. This is what I said about it being a laundry list of different stuff. So you do have to pause and read on your own. And then there's a boss. And it gives you a general idea of what you have. So it will have a lot of health if you directly kill all of it off. It will still have roughly about 2.5 million. It will lose 2/3 of its health. Actually, no, it has about 1 million left. But yeah. It even says if you cannot deal with the stun mode too, one tactic is to have a Kaiser Dragoon that helps you resist the damage you're about to take, and John with her HP weapon. That is the most accessible way, because you can get the Kaisers from the Adorno Orb Shop. If you cannot deal with that, the mode changes. That's your only safe way out of it without using an elixir. Provided that your damage is strong enough. Rank 6. I can easily agree with them on this one. The difficulty is harder than Guild Order. I would say it's starting to get into the roughly about between the 11th and 15th floors of Tower of Malice. So that's a good measuring stick for this. Another good measuring stick is the Ultimate Catastrophe. Generally, you want to be able to solo the Ultimate Catastrophe before you even go for rank 6. That's my suggestion to you. And a lot of these layouts can be particularly tricky, so keep that in mind. Now, I have to point out a few things here. The mid-boss for Thunder. That is not a lie on what it says on the HP. There is a reason for that. The defense value on this enemy is 10,000. In a game where most have 10. She literally has 1,000 times more defense. That reduces her damage she takes to astronomical levels. It is such pitiful damage you do to this one, even if you're much, much stronger. The trick to dealing with her is either damage over time or summoning Undoing. Both of those methods ignore defense, and that will make the fight extremely short. Otherwise, you are really going to have to try and pull out a lot of damage in order to try and bypass that, because she can heal herself. But that's the only really notable enemy I had to point out outside of the bosses. Now, the bosses themselves, very, very tricky to deal with. First thing you notice, out the gate, on its first turn, it will remove all its debuffs, and then on top of that, increase its resistance towards them. It's already got a high resistance, ultimate level resistance. What that means is, it's a very good chance of your debuffs not landing out the gate, and then it makes it even harder. It's probably at least Ragnarok level by the time it buffs itself. And even more so, you cannot remove this resistance buff. So, your best chance of using debuffs is surprisingly turn 1, and it may arguably be the best time to try and nuke this boss. But you have to keep this one thing in mind, that this boss is very, very resistant to debuffs, so you should not really rely on them. Mainly just rely on your own buffs and just your damage output. The second thing, well, that's also another thing too, the fact that because it's resistant, before I even go into the next thing, it starts feeling like it has a lot more HP than it really does. Not exactly the case, it's just that everybody's so used to defense debuffing at this point to where it feels like double the HP. But what really happens is you deal double the damage. Now, the second part. This boss loves debuffing you. And after that first turn, it will always stick different types of debuffs on you. So you have to be very wary of that one. Another kicker to these bosses. Based on how many debuffs you have, will determine how much damage you take on the 10th turn and every 5th turn after it up to the 30th. Generally, the fight should be over before the 30th turn. In fact, the fight should be over before the 20th because of what its nukes do. Regardless of whether it's in more raging mode or stun, you will be dealt damage based on your max HP. 20%. If you're not healing, you can only take 5 of these. At most. So that said, this fight is best dealt with as quickly as possible. Especially since, given the damage over time abilities it can randomly toss on you or even flat out make you lose some turns, you do want to end this as quickly as possible. And it has 2 orbs before it even uses its moves, so this fight can get hairy pretty fast if you're not quick enough. Keep that in mind. There isn't really too much else I need to really mention, but this water mid boss has 1 orb, so keep that in mind because she will start hitting you pretty hard pretty fast. She does do recoil damage to herself, which will reduce her own HP, but because it has 1 orb before she nukes, she can be a little bit tricky if you're not quicker with her. Same thing with the wind one. Same thing with the light one. And that one dark enemy that can just outright kill somebody with her debuffs. Yeah, she's back. But anyways, here's the info for the first one. Generally the same enemies for as the 5th layer though. You just have to deal with more HP. Mid bosses. And this is just the first 3 basically. Because I had no intention of showing all of the win one just yet. Then there's Wind Through Dark for the mid bosses. And then there's the boss itself to really sip and go for that one. And this is also a list of everything it does. All the damage over time is 500 damage. But it can give you a 50% attack down. It can put Rampage on you, which I think is what overheating is. It can put Burn, it can put Drown, it can put Poison, it can put Putrefy, it can put Blind, it can put Dizzy, it can put Paralyze, it can put Sleep, and Sleep actually works a bit like a paralysis mixed with a defense down. It's a lot of stuff she can put on you, so that, like I said, this fight can get pretty hairy pretty fast, because when it's not orb nuking you for 20% of your max HP, it will be putting a lot of these on you. So you may want some resistance or debuffs yourself. Or somebody that can just outright remove them. Now let's get into the hairiest of them all. Rank 7. I will say this. If you cannot solo ultimate catastrophes, do not think of this. Do not think of this. Second, you generally want a team that can possibly handle themselves in Ragnarok catastrophes with helpers. So, if you can do a substantial amount of damage in Ragnarok catastrophes, you should be able to safely clear this. But, bare minimum, be able to clear ultimate catastrophe, preferably without debuffs. If you can do that, you're probably strong enough to handle this content. Second, everything has a trigger in this fight. I mean, in these fights, including normal enemies. And the problem is, when you target them and do not kill them, they will counter with one of these special behaviors. Every normal enemy. I'm not kidding. I'm even scrolling down really quick to show that off. Every normal enemy. Make matters even worse. Mid bosses. Half of them have methods to reduce your HP very, very quickly. And over time, too. Some of them even have a strong burst to go with it. So, be very, very careful. Very, very careful. You will want some debuff resistance because it is taking chunks of your HP. 20% per turn. And to make matters even more worse is the light mid boss. If she's in normal mode and you activate a burst that has 3 or more and she survives, she will put that one debuff on everyone that can outright kill people. Not to mention, she will put depletion on you whenever she gets a full orb nuke. So you have to be very, very careful with that. She loves putting herself in normal mode in order to try and put that on you. So if you are going to burst on her, make sure you kill her. But preferably, you might want to save it for the boss anyways. And all the mid bosses have 6 million to 6.5 million HP. So keep that in mind. The bosses themselves, 11 million HP. They're pretty resistant to debuffs at expert level, but not as bad as the 6th layer, and they don't increase their resistance towards it. Their main gimmick is abilities. First off, if no one uses an ability, everybody gets hit, and they all have a chance of getting their defense reduced. You have to use an ability every turn if possible. That even includes when you burst too, so do not be surprised that if you forget to use an ability and you full burst, you still get nuked off of this if the boss survives. Now, the beneficial gimmick that they have, abilities have multiple colors. If you use each ability from each color, like say 1 yellow, 1 red, 1 blue, 1 green, this boss will skip a turn by increasing its maximum orb count. It literally just sits there and just increases its maximum orb count. You can do this twice. However, this does increase its orb as well, its current orbs, as well as its maximum. So you can make that 2 turn effectively become 4 orbs before it wants a nuke. At the same time, you can also add one of your own, so it can be 5 total. This is your saving grace to buy you some more time. So, if need be, make sure you have at least 2 blue and 2 green. Red and yellow is fairly common, so you may or may not have to worry about that. But make sure to use a red, a blue, a green, and a yellow all in the same turn in order to get this effect. And you can only do it twice. So we'll buy you 2 turns throughout the fight if need be. However, here's where the kicker is. The Raging Nuke, random 4 hits. If you remember the general damage of the random hits from the rank 4 bosses, about that same point. So if you're unlucky, somebody can outright die. But by the time you're facing this off, you should have more than enough HP to withstand it if it's spread out. Generally, I would suggest having about 20 million HP anyways by the time you try and take on Ragnarok enemies. The Ragnarok catastrophes. And I would probably have at least 15,000 HP before even trying any of these. Because at that point, you probably should be able to solo the ultimate catastrophes too. But that's not the worst part. Normal mode, and this is the main reason why you want to try and push her into Raging as quickly as possible. Normal mode, she will try to put ability seal on you. And remember, if nobody can activate an ability, she will have a counter nuke that lowers your defense and hits everybody. So that's the trick to this fight, ability spamming. But not spamming too much so you have all your stuff on cooldown. If you have characters that can use abilities every single turn, you are very well set for this fight. I do know there's Kali for Dark, and there's both Lug and Iris for Light. I'm not sure about the others. Another option is to bring Herc with Overlimit, because Overlimit is her mastery skill, usable every 2 turns, so it can give you a bit more of a safety net if you don't have somebody who can use it every turn. But other than that, that's the main gimmick to this fight, ability usage. You may see some of your debuffs miss. I generally see them miss about half the time on expert level resistance if I fight the light one. Others I can land them a little bit more frequently, especially on dark. But generally, you want to be able to use an ability every turn. That is the biggest thing. You do not want to be getting nuked, because the AoE nuke hits pretty hard, both of them. But at the same time, one is lowering your defenses. And if it lowers your defenses, the other nukes are going to really wring you dry on your HP. So be very careful of that. To make matters worse, there's a sprinkle effect enemy again. And this one is really going to enhance this team, so keep that in mind. But anyways, here's the data for this first stage, and it's getting pretty long. And keep in mind, regardless of which element, if you hit an enemy with normals and they survive, they will counter you. Everything has a trigger now. Here's the mid bosses that can cover the first 5 elements. And here's the dark one right here. Be very careful of the damage over time stuff too. And then here's a boss. And honestly, it's hard to say which boss will be tougher if they all had the same amount of HP between the 5th, 6th, and 7th layer. But I would generally say 7th layer because of the fact that you really have to pay attention to that fight. And it is really not auto-friendly too, so keep that in mind. You need to be super strong if you're wanting to try to auto the fight. Even then, you gotta make sure you bring a team that can instead of using an ability every turn, or the boss is gonna keep nuking you. But anyways, that's all for these videos. I'm sorry I had to split them because of the abrupt ending in the first one, but like I said, it's a long video. It's either watching these in separate segments, or you're getting a 1 hour plus video. Anyways, that's all for this. My suggestion to you is to try and get the highest layers you can, grind the highest accessories you can. Eventually, you're going to preferably have a full devil set, but maybe one of the type effects. I would probably get Tiara. But, accessories can start giving you a lot of different stuff too. And if you want to be honest, my preferred guide for anybody trying to go really offensive, make sure to get a counterattack roll, make sure to get a defense roll, make sure to get an attack roll, and then get, at least for the super buffed up devil stuff, and then fill up your slots with attack, triple attack, and 1 defense. That should cover a lot of your stuff. You will end up eating up 5 slots to triple attack, 6 slots to regular attack rolls, the 3 slots to the special effects, which is the attack, the counterattack, and the defense, and 1 last slot to defense. If you can get all of that, you should be very, very offensive. Or you can swap it up with burst, but you still have to get something defensive for the second one anyway. That's why I said defense, so you can actually withstand some crap, or at least withstand it better. But the offensive strategies, definitely try to get at least the attack rolls. Definitely try to get at least the counterattack roll, and try to get triple attack as well. You can even mix it up and just say, forget the random effect for second slot for defense, and get 2 double attack increases if you want, or 2 burst increases. Who knows? But the attack and the counterattack is the main thing in the triple attack. You get those for a character, they will be very strong. They will be hitting a lot. So there's that. But anyways, that's all for this. And I'm not going to have more of this soon, because I've done accessory quest videos for the most part, and I've covered a guide. What will happen, though, is that I still haven't gotten around to more of the actual raid bosses, because I did happen to mention them. I will be doing another raid boss video at some point, so keep that in mind. But anyways, that's all for this. Take care.